It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. A show of support and a military boost for Ukraine at the G7 summit as the US agrees allies can send fighter jets to help repel Russia.
See you on Monday. Bye.
Bye.
The final farewell. Phillip Schofield quits ITV show this morning after 20 years at the helm. Man City clinched the Premier League title without even kicking a ball today after a shock defeat for rivals Arsenal. Questions over whether the Home Secretary broke the ministerial code by asking for special treatment dealing with a speeding offence. Tributes to Martin Amis, the author of Money and London Fields, who's died at the age of 73. And Sinn Féin call for power sharing to return at Stormont once more as local elections in Northern Ireland show they'll become the largest party for the first time. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in the press preview from 10:30. Very good evening. Thanks for joining us. Of all the Ukrainian president's overseas visits, few have felt quite as consequential and controversial as today's trip to the G7. It began with what Volodymyr Zelensky described as a historic move by the United States. President Biden giving his approval for allies to supply Ukraine with American-made F-16 fighter jets. It also saw sanctions on Russia tightened and President Zelensky given FaceTime with world leaders like India's Prime Minister, who until now have refused to back Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. The Kremlin responded by saying the day's developments were an escalation that carried enormous risks for those involved. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, sent this report from the Japanese city of Hiroshima, where G7 leaders are meeting for their annual summit.
President Zelensky landing in Japan, stepping into the arms of the world's most powerful democracies. On the sidelines of the summit, waiting in the wings to embrace the support of key partners.
Yeah, made it. All right, thanks. Bye, guys.
The US promised that allies will supply F-16 fighter jets. In his words, a historic moment.
President Zelensky, are you closer to peace now, sir?
For this president, a major move in Ukraine's quest to end this war.
It's a good day, isn't it? A good day.
Thanks so much.
And these leaders no doubt agree, standing united against Russian aggression.
Very bright.
The geopolitical outlook so far from bright, but a hope that peace will prevail. These allies hand in glove, ready to support Ukraine.
My word is to say that from the very beginning you know that France is shoulder to shoulder with you. We are here and we will be here till the very end. Be sure about that.
Thank you for all this support, and we spoke a lot about future JETS coalition, and I want to thank you and all the partners about this decision, about training mission. It's really, really very, very important.
Close allies and firm friends who have put in the time and effort to make sure they're aligned not just on Ukraine, but on future threats too. The G7 leaders also condemning an increasingly muscular China, expressing serious concern over the economic and military danger Beijing poses in the final summit statement, as these democracies defend their ground.
Back in the days of Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, G7s were more often than not punctuated by division. But allies here have sought to portray a united front against common threats, standing literally shoulder to shoulder with President Zelensky and Ukraine, whilst also issuing a joint statement criticising China's increasing economic and military aggression.
No time to look away. Russia absent but acutely aware of what's going on here. Tonight saying the West's decision to provide jets is a colossal risk, but one allies are willing, finally, to take. Beth Rigby, Sky News in Hiroshima.
While President Zelensky was in Japan, a mercenary group laying siege to his country on behalf of Russia claimed to have taken control of the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, a claim, it should be said, that was swiftly denied by Ukraine's military. The Wagner group leader made the claim in this video posted online, but a spokesperson of the Joint Forces of Ukraine told Sky News this is not true. Fighting is going on in the city. Well, Sky's Alex Rossi was in Bakhmut this week and witnessed the fighting taking place. Alex, is this all part of the propaganda war, or is Russia on the brink of taking full control?
It is extremely hard to say exactly what is going on. It is a case of claim and counterclaim tonight. But if you actually look at what's going on in the ground, whether or not it has fallen to the last building, doesn't really make much of a difference. The soldiers I spoke to, Ukrainian soldiers, said that the city really was hanging by a thread. About 95% of it in recent weeks has been captured by the Russians. There are only a few blocks left. Now, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner paramilitary group, says they have taken all of it now. That has been denied by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, but effectively the city is now anyway under Russian control. What does it mean? Well, it's certainly a symbolic victory for Russia, but it comes at a great cost. It's taken them months to capture what I think is Ukraine's 56th largest city, pre-war population of around 50,000. So it's a pretty small place. I've been there many times throughout this conflict. So in that sense, it's not very significant. They've also spent an enormous amount of material. Tens of thousands of soldiers have been killed there, but they will finally be able to say, to their audience at home, to Russian people, that they have had some kind of victory. From the Ukrainian point of view, if indeed it has fallen, it is going to be a psychological blow. They have also thrown an enormous amount of resource at it. But really, it's fundamentally unlikely to change the course of this war. It is of limited strategic value. The bigger question revolves around what happens now with Ukraine's spring counteroffensive, or it may very well turn into be a summer counteroffensive. That is more likely to change the course of the war when it starts.
Alex in Dnipro Forest tonight, thank you. Back here, TV presenter Phillip Schofield has quit as a presenter on ITV's This Morning after more than 20 years in the role. It follows weeks of speculation about a growing rift with co-presenter Holly Willoughby, and a day after his brother Timothy Schofield was jailed over child sex offences. Emma Birchley reports.
See you on Monday. Bye. Bye.
Little did he know, but after more than 2 decades, this was to be Phillip Schofield's last goodbye from the famous This Morning sofa. It was on Thursday, the day before his brother Timothy Schofield would be sentenced to 12 years in prison for a string of child sex offences, and against a backdrop of rumours that his relationship with co-host Holly Willoughby had fallen apart. In a statement, he said, "Recently, This Morning itself has become the story. Throughout my career in TV, including the very difficult last few days, I have always done my best to be honourable and kind. I understand that ITV has decided the current situation can't go on, and I want to do what I can to protect the show that I love. So I have agreed to step down from This Morning with immediate effect." No mention of Holly Willoughby. Things had been tough for the pair after being accused of queue jumping to see the Queen lying in state in September. And he took a pre-planned break from the show during his brother's trial, which added further strain. Jurors had heard that Timothy Schofield had told Phillip that he and his victim had watched pornography together. Following conviction, Phillip said he no longer had a brother. But despite the rumours about a fallout with his co-host, Phillip Schofield reportedly told The Sun earlier this month that he and Holly were still the best of friends, although admitting the last few weeks hadn't been easy.
Oh, it must have been absolute hell for him to wake up and they look at the papers and the big stories of the day at the top of their show. They have been having to avoid one of the biggest tabloid stories, at least, of the week, which is them. I suspect he has been going through a difficult time personally. It hasn't shown on air until, I think, this week. It's an accumulation of things that seems to have affected the relationship and maybe maybe it affected Holly Willoughby's brand.
All you can be in your life is honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And I was getting to the point where I knew I wasn't honest with myself.
The pair's bond had once been strong. Schofield, married for 27 years, crying on Holly's shoulder in February 2020 after announcing that he was gay. She was quick to release a statement after the news of his departure, saying, "It's been over 13 great years presenting This Morning with Phil, and I want to take this opportunity to thank him for all of his knowledge, his experience and his humour. The sofa won't feel the same without him." Holly will be back on that sofa on the 5th of June after the half-term break. For Philip, a new primetime show is on its way, presumably once the dust has settled. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
Now, Manchester City retained their Premier League title today without even having to kick a ball. Their third title in a row was confirmed after second-placed Arsenal lost at Nottingham Forest, giving City an unassailable lead at the top of the table. Now, after that result, Manchester City posted this video of the team celebrating the results. Just fantastic. Sky's Fraser Moore is in Manchester Forest this evening. Fraser, the team delighted the fans too.
Absolutely. A bit of an early celebration as well. I don't think many people thought that Arsenal would slip up quite how they did against Nottingham Forest down at City Ground today. Great news for Nottingham Forest. It ensures their Premier League survival. But Arsenal, well, they started to let things slip a little while ago. They had a string of draws, and they got beaten by City 4-1, and then another defeat by Brighton last week really put them up against it. Statistically, if they'd won today, they could still have potentially won the Premier League title. But everyone's money, I think, was always on Manchester City to do it. Even if Arsenal had won today, it would have needed City to lose 2 of the next 3 games and only get a draw in the other one, and I don't think anyone thought that that was ever going to happen. I can have a chat with a couple of the fans down here who've come down to celebrate. There are about 100 or so fans earlier on. There's a few left now. I can have a quick chat here with Tom. Tom, how are you doing? Celebrating today?
Yeah.
Did you think you'd be able to celebrate today, or did you think it was going to be tomorrow when you take on Chelsea here at the Etihad?
I think it would be a draw, to be fair, and then we would win it tomorrow and lift the Premier League tomorrow.
So you thought Arsenal would get a draw today,
yeah.
But you can celebrate tonight?
Yeah.
So all you've got to do now is the treble. Is that doable?
Yeah, I think we'll beat United in the final, and then we'll beat Inter Milan in Turkey.
A confident man. That's what we like to hear. Jimmy, let's have a chat with you. What did you make of it today? Did you expect to win it today?
To be fair, I was kind of hoping Forest would have got a draw, so it was kind of in the bag if that was the case. But obviously, great result. We don't have to get out of second gear tomorrow now. So yeah, decent.
And you can quite literally be on the beach against Brighton and then Brentford.
Well, that's it. We don't have to do anything now. We can rest players. But for me, like, if you rest too many people, like, the rhythm goes. So play them like 60 minutes or so, get them back off. But yeah, scary.
I mean, all the talk this season has been about the possibility of a treble. The first part of it's been ticked off, 3 games early.
Yeah.
Manchester United in the FA Cup final, then Inter in the Champions League final. Is it on?
One game at a time. Been a City fan long enough to know, like, anything can happen. I'm quite pessimistic as well, so one game at a time.
Wow.
Beat United and then it's on.
That's it.
So,
that's it. One game at a time. You sound like a football manager, mate. So celebrations down here tonight. One day early. Chelsea here tomorrow. That's when you will have tens of thousands of fans here really celebrating that Manchester City win. The 3rd win in a row. The 5th in 6 seasons. They are a powerhouse of Premier League football.
They really are. Good stuff. Fraser in Manchester, thank you. Now, Labour tonight is calling for an investigation into whether the Home Secretary broke the ministerial code by asking for special treatment dealing with a speeding offence. So let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig. So, John, what's the allegation here?
Well, but just before she became Home Secretary last year, when she was Attorney General, she was done for speeding. Instead of paying the fine, accepting the points and so on, or going on one of those speed awareness courses where you have 10 or 20 or 25 people in the room, she asked or she got civil servants here when she just arrived here as Home Secretary, if she could have a one-to-one, a private speed awareness course. Now, the Home Office civil servants initially said no. They consulted the Cabinet Office, who backed them, and in the end, she took the points and paid the fine. But now, of course, she's facing allegations that she's broken the ministerial code. Both Labour and the Liberal Democrats say there needs to be an investigation by the Prime Minister's ethics advisor, that's Laurie Magnus, appointed towards the end of last year. Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, says the disclosure that she tried to, if you like, cheat the system or a special dodger fine was shocking. And she said this is Yvette Cooper: the Prime Minister has promised integrity, professionalism and accountability, yet it appears his Home Secretary is blatantly flouting all three. We need an urgent investigation into what has gone on here, starting with Laurie Magnus, seeing how this is possibly compatible with the ministerial code. Now, we spoke to the Cabinet Office. What they said was it would not be appropriate to comment on the existence or content of advice between government departments, in this case between the Home Office and the Cabinet Office. Now, friends of Suella Braverman are telling Sky News that, well, the reason she didn't want to go to one of these big speed awareness sessions is she'd have to take her protection officers with her, and so she didn't want to do that. But she is under pressure now from political opponents. Remember, she had to go as Home Secretary briefly when she breached the ministerial code last year over leaking some Whitehall material to a Tory MP, Sir John Hayes. It's come at the end of a bad week. She made a controversial, some would say inflammatory speech at a conference just along down the road here early in the week, was told to stick to the day job. Her personal poll ratings have fallen, and now she's facing the possibility of an inquiry by the Prime Minister's ethics advisor. Some of her supporters will no doubt claim it's another example of the civil servants, the blob as some call them, trying to bring down a Tory cabinet minister.
John, outside the Home Office, thank you. Now, there was some sad news this evening. The author Martin Amis has died at the age of 73. The influential writer of novels, including Money, London Fields and The Information, passed away at his home in Florida. His wife, the writer Isabel Fonseca, said he died of cancer of the esophagus. And in a tribute, Martin Amis's publisher said the following: "We are devastated at the death of our author and friend Martin Amis. Novelist, essayist, memoirist, critic, stylist supreme. He was always unfailingly warm, kind and generous to those fortunate enough to work closely with him. His death is an enormous loss to all of us at Penguin Random House and to the UK's cultural landscape." Also in a tribute, the Booker Prize released a statement saying, "We are saddened to hear that Martin Amis, one of the most acclaimed and discussed novelists of the past 50 years, has died. Our thoughts are with his family and friends." Police in Greater Manchester have arrested a second person and seized 15 dogs in connection with the death of a 37-year-old man. Jonathan Hogg was attacked in Lee on Thursday and died in hospital after suffering serious injuries. Sinn Féin will be the largest party in local government in Northern Ireland for the first time in history. Counting has been taking place throughout the day of votes cast in Thursday's elections. Sinn Féin Vice President Michelle O'Neill used the result to repeat her call for the DUP to restore power sharing at Stormont. Well, here's the current state of the parties. Sinn Féin has secured 30.9% of first preference votes so far, followed by the DUP and then the Alliance Party. The results will decide who will represent voters on 11 of Northern Ireland's local councils. Our senior Ireland correspondent David Blevins has the latest from Belfast. Just a warning, his report does contain flash photography.
The rise and rise of Sinn Féin, the largest party at Stormont, now the largest party in local government. Michelle O'Neill says the DUP should respect that mandate and restore power sharing, allowing her to become First Minister at last.
There shouldn't be any delays. We should not be waiting till the autumn to have a restored executive and assembly. There's no reason for it not to be sitting tomorrow, next week. There's no reason for any delay. The DUP are in a battle with the British government, and the people are the collateral damage in the middle of that battle, and that's not acceptable. It's not good enough.
Turnout was lower in unionist areas, but the DUP says there's clear support for its boycott of devolution over post-Brexit trading arrangements.
The DUP's mandate is strong, and I am not going to allow anyone to swipe aside the voice of unionism. I will continue standing up for unionism, for Northern Ireland, to fix the problems that confront us at the moment, to ensure that our place in the United Kingdom is not only respected, but is protected in law.
Most of the focus has been on the two largest parties, but there is a quiet revolution continuing in the middle ground. The Alliance Party, which doesn't designate as unionist or nationalist, cementing its position as the third force in Northern Irish politics. But the Alliance leader is worried about some sections of the community disengaging altogether.
Ultimately, if people are sitting at home, it's because they don't feel that there's anything to come out and vote for. And I believe it's important that people participate. And I would hope that other parties would be concerned when they see sections of the electorate not feeling empowered, not feeling motivated, and not wanting to come out and participate in the elections.
With no devolved government in place, many people are disillusioned by the political stalemate here.
Things don't change. So I just expect the results are going to be the same as they were last year.
I think there's a sleeping giant in the middle that's not that's disengaged from local politics.
There is apathy, and it's a shame, but there is a growing apathy.
The more things change, the more they stay the same in a divided society, still struggling to emerge from the politics of them and us. David Blevins, Sky News in Belfast.
Surfers took to the waters around the UK today in protest at the state they're left in by water companies. The industry apologised this week over the amount of raw sewage pumped out into rivers and seas and pledged to spend £10 billion to clean up their act. Sky's Aisha Zahid reports from Brighton.
I am sick of seeing sewage in our beautiful beaches and rivers.
Here in Brighton, their message is a clear one. These campaigners are protesting against sewage spills in a demonstration organised by Surfers Against Sewage. The paddleboarders, kayakers and swimmers are calling for bathing waters to be protected from raw sewage.
It's a really important time right now for protesting on water quality. We've finally got the public to notice, we've got communities noticing, we've even got media outlets running their own campaigns. The time is now to make the water companies notice, the government and regulators, and actually enact some change.
That's why they also want to see sewage discharges as a whole cut by 90% in the next 7 years. Their demands come days after the industry apologised.
The water companies have pledged £10 billion to cleaning up their act, but with more than 300,000 sewage spills in England alone last year, these protesters are sceptical it's going to make any real change.
It should be a safe place to swim, it should be a safe place to paddleboard, but it's not, and we've lost, months of good swimming last year.
My daughter got sick in a river last year.
The profits that the water companies are taking, that the shareholders are taking, and that money needs to be spent on infrastructure.
Protests were held across the UK, including here in Scarborough, where things looked a little different.
I've spoken to the lifeguards. We're not allowed in the water because it's too dirty.
The water here is currently deemed to be too dangerous, but that didn't stand in anyone's way. There's concerns over what this all means for the local economy.
The water companies are going to have to put an end to it because tourists are coming here, and if they're going to be told that they can't go in the sea, then where are they going to go? This is the primary reason why people come to the seaside.
Water UK are adamant that this time they will get it right. In a statement, the chair of the organisation said, "The message from the water and sewage industry is clear. We are sorry. More should have been done to address the issue of spillages sooner, and the public is right to be upset about the current quality of our rivers and beaches. We have listened and have an unprecedented plan to start to put it right. It's clear that resolving the problem will take time, but this may well be the point we see a turn of the tide." Aisha Zahid, Sky News in Brighton.
Let's get the latest on that Manchester City news and the rest of the sport with Matt.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Hi, my name is Khadija and I train as a jockey, and this is a day in my life during Ramadan. The big boy. Ramadan is a time during the year where I can really simplify and break down what it means to be a Muslim for me. It's also a month of discipline. Riding out, having a routine takes discipline. So we come in and get the horses cleaned and tacked up, grab your equipment, get on.
Can you explain what sari is?
It's a meal just before Fajr, which is just before sunrise. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who encouraged us to eat a small meal so we can keep going through the day whilst we're fasting. It's a very blessed meal, so I try when I can and when I'm not too tired to eat. This morning I had porridge and a leftover sandwich. In terms of riding out, it's not too hard. I only have 2 horses a day in the mornings. When I'm riding more, so sort of 3 or 4 horses a day, it can get quite tough. But currently I've just stuck to 2, so we're all good so far. It can be quite tough. It is a lot of patience, but once you get a routine of just eating slightly later and having breakfast so early, you just sort of like your body adjusts to it. It also reminds you that, like, you know, we are simple creatures, human beings, and, you know, we're not as invincible as we think. And I think in the 21st century, we forget how fragile as humans we are and how much we depend on things. And for me specifically, like, in a world where everything is so easy to get, having restrictions and practicing, like, restricting your desires is all about sort of like self-discipline and understanding your limits. So this is a day in the life of me training in the mornings. I'm going to head back to my house to pray Dhuhr and Asr, and during Ramadan my goal is to try and pray my prayers on time, so gotta head back quite quickly. So after my training, I always try and grab a shower and prepare for my second prayer of the day, Dhuhr. Before I can do that, I have to do wudu, which is a cleansing process.
How often do you read the Quran?
During Ramadan, it is one of the main things that we're supposed to focus on is returning back to the Quran and getting closer to the Quran. So I'm going to make a huge effort to try and read this more often. Now it's time to pray Asr. Allah Akbar. So the sun's setting, which means that I need to go and pray my 4th prayer of the day, Maghrib. I'm going to make my wudu and get ready for iftar to break my fast. So now I'm going to show you guys what I have for iftar. So normally I start off by breaking fast with a few dates. Normally I have some majul dates, or my favourites are from Algeria and Tunisia. But that's just my personal preference. And then I have some grapes. Sometimes I have watermelon as well, and strawberries and berries. Depends what I can get my hands on earlier in the day. I also have to consider getting my protein intake because I only have 2 opportunities to eat during the day during Ramadan. So that would be during iftar and then my suhoor in the morning. I try my best to incorporate like chicken and protein and substitutions for proteins, and sometimes I get some vegetarian stuff. I try and make sure I cover my water intake because I get so dehydrated during the day, especially if I'm training. And then afterwards I have a starter. My mum normally makes a beautiful soup called shurba. However, unfortunately, when I'm training and I'm away from home, I'm not that good at making it, so I don't even try. And then I have samosa. My mum normally fries them up and she makes them. When I'm away, I just buy them. So yeah, I'm a little bit lazy, but there's plenty of meat and vegetables in the samosas, but they're not 100% as healthy, but I sort of see them as like a treat. By that point, my appetite has shrunk, so sometimes I get so full just after a few bits, but my main meal is normally like quite protein heavy, and I normally have like a rice and curry or rice and chicken.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Thanks, Matt, and that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, as always, we're going to take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview, including the Phillip Schofield story on most of the front pages, including the Mirror, the headline they've gone with.